This happened back in October of 1998. I was 32 at the time and lived in a small village outside Peterborough. My husband worked long hours in London and never got home before 8 in the evening. We had an old mobile phone in the car glove box, but it didn't work because the cigarette lighter socket had a blown fuse. My youngest 2 kids were 1 and 3 years old. The youngest had a bad chest infection, and our local doctor was completely booked up. Because we lived far away, the specialist pediatric clinic gave us the last 2 appointments of the day. The clinic had just moved to a brand new, isolated medical park off a new road near Spalding. There were no houses or petrol stations nearby, just flat fields. When I pulled up in my blue Vauxhall Frontera around 4:30, there were only 4 or 5 other cars in the lot. We went inside, saw the doctor, got the prescription, and paid. By the time we walked out, it was about 5:45. It was completely dark outside and freezing cold. I must have left my side lights on when we arrived. Or maybe the sudden drop in temperature just killed the cell, because when I turned the key, the engine didn't start at all. There was just a clicking noise from the dashboard. My stomach dropped. I tried a few more times, but nothing happened. I took the kids out of their seats, went back to the front doors, and knocked until the receptionist let us back into the dim lobby. I used the plastic payphone on the wall to look through a yellow pages and called a local breakdown garage. The mechanic told me he was busy on another job but would get to me in about an hour or an hour and a half. I gave him our location and description. The receptionist had to catch her bus and lock up, so I told her we would wait in the car. She locked the doors, got into her car at the back of the building, and drove away. It was completely silent. Because it was freezing, but the car was losing heat, I rolled the front windows down about an inch so the glass wouldn't fog up. I kept the interior lights off to save the battery. I climbed into the back seat to give the kids some milk and snacks to keep them quiet. I was tired, stressed, and completely focused on the toddlers. About 20 minutes later, a pair of headlights turned into the car park. I felt a massive wave of relief because I thought the mechanic had arrived early. An unmarked white transit van pulled up right in front of my car and cut its lights. A man got out. He wasn't wearing a uniform, just a dirty green wax jacket and dark trousers. He looked middle-aged and scruffy, but it was the end of the day for a rural mechanic, so I didn't think anything of it. He walked up to my open window and nodded. "Evening, love. Having a bit of trouble starting her up?" "Yes, it's completely dead," I said from the back seat. "Just a clicking sound." "Right then," he said. "Pop the bonnet for me." I reached into the front, pulled the release lever, and heard the bonnet pop. The man walked around to the front, lifted the hood, and started messing with the engine. I climbed back into the driver's seat and left my door open a few inches so I could hear him. I kept my foot near the clutch, waiting for him to tell me to try the ignition. I expected him to get jumper cables, but he didn't. He just stood there behind the raised bonnet for several minutes. It was taking an awfully long time just to look at a battery. Because the bonnet was up, I couldn't see his face or body at all, but through the narrow horizontal gap between the windshield and the base of the open bonnet, I could see his hands. His hands weren't near the battery terminals. They were moving very slowly in the dead center of the engine block. "What do you think it is?" I called out. "Oh, it's not the battery, love." His voice came back. He sounded completely calm. "It's just a loose wire near the bulkhead. A bit tricky to spot." He kept moving his hands in that narrow gap. He wasn't using a torch, even though the only light came from a single street lamp at the entrance of the lot. "Could you step out here for a second, please?" he asked. "Oh, I don't know anything about cars," I said, laughing nervously. I gripped the steering wheel. I'm useless with engines. No, seriously, just hop out for a second, he insisted. His tone was polite, but he kept repeating himself. I want to show you exactly which wire it is. That way, if it happens again when you're out with the kids, you can just pinch it back into place yourself. Honestly, it's fine, I said. My voice was getting tight. I'll just have my husband look at it later. The kids are getting restless. It'll only take a second, love, he said. His voice didn't sound warm anymore. It was completely flat and hard. Just step out of the car, come around to the front and look where my hand is. I sat completely frozen. Everything in me was telling me not to be rude. He was fixing my car in the cold. I didn't want to make him angry and have him leave us stranded with no heating, but I had a horrible feeling in my stomach. Through the gap under the windshield, I watched his hands. He wasn't holding tools. He was holding something long and dark, turning it over and over. Come on out, love, he said again. His voice was very low. Just come to the front. I'm waiting. I was terrified. I could hear my daughter humming in the back seat. My heart was beating so hard I thought he would hear it. I realized he wanted me to unbuckle my belt, get out, and walk around to the front where no one from the road could see me. I can't leave the babies, I stammered. I tried to sound normal. If I move, the little one will start screaming. There was a long silence. The hands in the windshield gap stopped moving completely. You're being very difficult, you know that? He said softly. Right then, another set of bright headlights turned into the car park, filling my entire car with white light. The man reacted instantly. He slammed my car bonnet shut with a massive crash that made the kids scream. He didn't look at me or say a word. He sprinted to his white van, threw himself inside, started the engine, and sped out of the car park so fast his tires screeched. I sat there shaking, holding the steering wheel. A yellow AA breakdown truck pulled into the space next to me. The mechanic climbed out in a bright orange jacket, looking confused as the white van disappeared onto the road. I opened my door and stumbled out. My legs felt like jelly. Evening, Mrs. Reynolds, the mechanic said. Who was that? He nearly took my front bumper off. I don't know, I whispered. I was shaking violently. I thought he was you. He said he was fixing a wire. The mechanic looked at me and realized I was in shock. Are you all right, love? You look white as a sheet. Let me get my cables and look at this engine. He got his jumper cables, walked to the front of my car, opened the bonnet, and put the prop rod up. I stood back by my door, trying to calm the kids down. The mechanic leaned over the engine, but he stopped immediately. He didn't hook up the cables. He just stared into the center of the engine bay. What is it? I asked. Mrs. Reynolds, he said. His voice was very quiet and strange. He didn't look up at me. Is this yours? Did you leave this in here? He reached down into the space right on top of the plastic engine cover and lifted something up. It was a pair of heavy surgical shears, about 1.5 feet long. They were very old and covered in red rust, but instead of normal scissor handles, they had small circular finger loops, like an old medical tool. No, I said, I've never seen that before. Well, it hasn't been here long, the mechanic said. He looked completely pale under the truck's lights. It was sitting right on top of the engine casing, right where that bloke's hands were. It must have been left there during an old service, I said, trying to find a normal explanation because I was terrified. It's old and rusty. The mechanic shook his head. He turned the long metal blades and pointed to the sharp edges near the tips. No, love. Look, he said, the body is rusty, yeah. But see the edges and the tip? Someone has taken a grinding wheel to this very recently. The rust is completely gone on the blades. Look how bright the steel is. These are razor sharp. I looked at the silver edges of the shears. The realization hit me. The man hadn't caused my car to break down. He had simply driven past, seen a woman stranded alone with 2 young children in an isolated car park, and decided to exploit the opportunity. He had been standing behind the raised bonnet, hidden from the road, checking the edge of an 18-inch blade, waiting for me to walk around to the front of the car. The only reason I was safe was because the real mechanic arrived early. The mechanic hooked up the cables, and the flat battery finally caught, the engine roaring to life. He put the shears into a heavy plastic bag and handed them to me through the window. "Go straight home and call the police, Mrs. Reynolds. I'll follow you to the main road." I drove home in a daze. The plastic bag sat on the passenger seat next to me. When I got home, I locked all the doors, put the kids to bed, and called the police. I spent 20 minutes explaining everything and offered to bring the shears in. The officer on the phone took down all the details, but he explained that because it was a rural county on a busy night, they didn't have an available unit to send out immediately. Since the suspect had fled, no physical assault had taken place, and we were now safely locked inside our home. He told me an officer would be dispatched to our house the following morning to take a formal statement and collect the item as evidence. He advised me to leave the bag untouched in a safe place until they arrived, but they never showed up. When I called the station the next afternoon to follow up, I was told the details had been logged, but due to a major road accident on the A16, the local units had been completely tied up, and the report had essentially been shelved. I couldn't bear to look at the shears. I wrapped them in old newspapers and hid them at the very back of the dark brick coal bunker in our garden. They stayed there for 4 years until we moved to Yorkshire. When we were packing, I took the damp bundle out of the bunker and threw it straight into the rubbish bin. Years later, when the internet became common, I searched online archives for crime reports in East Anglia from the late 90s. Between 1996 and 1999, 3 young women had vanished from dark roads and laybys across Lincolnshire and Cambridgeshire. 2 of their bodies were found in drainage dikes months later. The police reports noted that the killer used a sharp instrument with clinical precision. The 3rd woman was never found. I still think about that night whenever it gets dark and cold. I think about how close I came to getting out of the car just to be polite to a stranger. And I wonder how many other times that white van pulled into an empty lot, and how many other women actually got out to look at the wire